Let's get one thing clear. A narcissist is not drawn to you because of love. They're not interested in connection, growth, or mutual understanding. What pulls a narcissist toward you is control, power, manipulation. That's their game. And if you're not playing by their rules, you don't become their partner. You become their problem. In the beginning, it can look like love. It feels intoxicating, like something rare and faded. The attention is overwhelming. Constant messages, endless compliments, big gestures that seem romantic but are actually strategic. They study you with precision. Every insecurity, every soft spot, every story you share becomes ammunition for later. They're scanning for your vulnerabilities, for what makes you light up, what makes you crave approval, what makes you feel seen. And once they know, they weaponize it. That early phase, that whirlwind of affection, it's not love, it's love bombing. And it's not meant to build connection. It's meant to create control. Because the faster you get hooked, the faster they can tighten their grip. That's the goal, always has been. A narcissist doesn't want an equal. They want an echo. Someone who mirrors their moods, validates their ego, orbits around their chaos. You are not a partner in their world. You're an accessory to their illusion. And the moment you stop playing the role, the moment you question, express doubt, or God forbid, set a boundary, the mask slips, the warmth turns cold, the charm turns sharp. The compliments become criticisms. The same person who once said you were perfect now calls you too sensitive, too emotional, too much. It's not random. It's not misunderstanding. It's manipulation. This is the devaluation stage, psychological warfare designed to break you down. Why? Because strength is a threat to them. When you're confident, you're hard to control. When you're self-aware, you start noticing patterns. You start resisting. You stop dancing to their rhythm. And they can't stand that. They thrive when you're unsure of yourself, when you're second-guessing, apologizing, trying harder, blaming yourself for their moods. That's where they feel powerful. But the moment you get clear, the moment you realize your worth doesn't depend on their validation, that's when the real battle begins. Not against them, against the part of you that's been conditioned to believe you have to earn love through suffering. A narcissist doesn't fear losing you because they love you. They fear losing the control they have over you. Your emotions, your reactions, your choices. They fear the day you stop explaining yourself. Because when you stop explaining, you stop being controlled. And when they sense that strength, when they see your peace starting to rise, that's when they panic. That's when they escalate. They gaslight you, they twist the truth, they play the victim, anything to drag you back into confusion, because clarity is their enemy and your liberation. When you start to see through the game, something powerful begins to happen. You wake up. You stop reacting the way they expect you to. You stop falling for the same emotional traps. And for a narcissist, that awakening is terrifying. They feel their control slipping, and that's when they start to escalate. The charm fades and the manipulation intensifies. They'll gaslight you, twist your words, and rewrite the past so convincingly that you start to doubt your own memory. They'll say things like, "You're remembering it wrong," or "That never happened," or "You're too sensitive," until you begin to question your own reality. That's not confusion, that's conditioning. Gaslighting is their favorite weapon because it attacks your sense of truth. If they can make you doubt what you see, what you hear, what you feel, then they can rewrite your story. And when they control the story, they control you. You'll notice how they always turn everything back on you. If you bring up something hurtful they did, suddenly you're the one who's overreacting. If you try to set a boundary, you're selfish. If you ask for respect, you're too demanding. It's a cycle of blame so subtle that you start to carry guilt for things that weren't your fault. And that guilt, that's where they thrive. Because guilt makes you compliant. Guilt keeps you apologizing, over-explaining, trying to prove your good intentions. But you can't reason with manipulation. You can't logic your way through emotional warfare. Narcissists aren't looking for understanding. They're looking for control. They'll even play the victim when you finally pull away. They'll cry, make promises, talk about how hurt they are, all to trigger your empathy. Because if they can't control you through fear, they'll control you through compassion. This is important to understand. Narcissists don't want closeness. They want compliance. They don't want emotional intimacy. They want dominance. Every time you open up to them, every time you share something vulnerable, they don't hold it with care. They store it like ammunition. Later, they'll use your fears, your secrets, your dreams against you. They'll twist your words until you start questioning why you ever opened up in the first place. That's how they win, by making you distrust yourself. But here's the truth. Your awareness is the beginning of your freedom. The moment you start seeing the pattern, you start taking your power back. Because once you can name the game, you stop playing it. You start recognizing that the chaos, the confusion, the emotional highs and lows, none of it is love, it's control. Real love doesn't leave you anxious, paranoid, or constantly walking on eggshells. Real love doesn't require you to shrink yourself to be tolerated. When you finally see that, everything begins to shift. You start to understand that the version of you they fell for in the beginning, confident, kind, empathetic, full of light, that's the version they tried to destroy, because that's the version they could never control. And now, that version of you is coming back. The next time they gaslight you, remember this: you are not crazy. You are not too emotional. You are not too much. You are seeing the truth. And the truth will always make a manipulator uncomfortable. That discomfort you see in them when you start standing tall, that's not love leaving, that's power leaving. So when they twist the story, when they call you names, when they tell you you've changed, remember this: yes, you have. You've stopped bending. You've stopped apologizing for being human. You've stopped letting someone else's chaos define your peace. You've stopped being their echo, and you've started being your own voice again. And that's what they fear most. Not your anger, not your silence, but your clarity. Because clarity means they can no longer hide behind confusion. It means their illusion is crumbling. It means you're free. And once you taste that freedom, once you remember who you are without their noise, there's no going back. This is where the power shifts, not in confrontation, not in revenge, but in quiet, grounded truth. That's how you win, by refusing to play. There comes a moment, usually quiet and almost anticlimactic, when you realize something fundamental has shifted inside you. It's not dramatic, it's not even angry, it's just clear. You stop chasing explanations. You stop searching for the right words to make them understand. You stop believing that if you just love harder, they'll finally see you. That moment, the moment you no longer need their validation, is the moment a narcissist starts to lose their power over you. Up until then, they've had you trapped in a loop. Provoke, confuse, apologize, repeat. It's a loop that thrives on your emotional reaction. Every tear, every argument, every desperate attempt to fix things gives them fuel. They don't care whether your reaction is love or anger. As long as you're reacting, they feel significant. But when you fall silent, when you no longer rise to their bait, when you start observing instead of absorbing, they feel it. It's like their reflection has gone missing. Narcissists depend on attention the way the rest of us depend on oxygen. They need to be seen, adored, feared, or pitied, anything but ignored. And that's what makes your silence their worst nightmare. Because silence means you're no longer playing your role. Silence means you've stepped outside their script. And when you do that, the illusion they've built, the one where they're always in control, starts to crack. That's when they begin to panic. You'll see them switch tactics faster than ever before. One day they might act contrite, soft-spoken, vulnerable, confessing their flaws in a way that almost feels genuine. The next day, they'll lash out with cruelty, accusing you of being cold or selfish. It's all part of the same desperate strategy, to make you react again. They'll say or do whatever it takes to pull you back into the storm because that's where they feel safe, in chaos, not calm. The hardest part is not getting pulled back in, because part of you still remembers the beginning, the warmth, the laughter, the intensity that felt like love. You remember the version of them who seemed to understand you better than anyone else. But that version wasn't real. It was a mask carefully designed to hook you. The person standing before you now, the one trying to twist your peace into guilt, that's who they truly are. You have to remind yourself of that every time nostalgia starts whispering lies. You'll be tempted to explain one last time, to defend your perspective, to prove you're not the villain in their rewritten story. Don't. Because narcissists aren't listening to understand. They're listening to reload. Every explanation you give becomes another angle to attack from. The more you talk, the deeper they dig. The real power is in disengagement, not debate. And it's not easy. Walking away from someone who has entangled themselves with your emotions feels like withdrawal. You'll crave closure. You'll crave understanding. But closure from a narcissist doesn't exist, because they would have to take accountability for the pain they caused. And that's something they are fundamentally incapable of doing. You're not going to get peace from their apology. You're going to get peace from your acceptance. Acceptance that they will never see it the way you do. Acceptance that the version of the relationship you were fighting for only existed in your mind. Acceptance that it's not your job to fix what broke them. That's when real healing begins. Not when they finally change, but when you stop waiting for them to. You start noticing things differently. You start sleeping better. You start breathing deeper. You laugh again. Not the nervous, uncertain laughter you used to use to keep the peace, but real laughter. The kind that comes from a place that's no longer afraid. You start realizing how much space they took up in your head. Every conversation you rehearsed, every argument you relived, every apology you gave just to stop the tension. And suddenly there's room for something new, your peace. Peace feels strange at first. You'll mistake it for emptiness, for boredom, for loss. But that's just your nervous system adjusting to calm after so long surviving chaos. Peace isn't empty, it's quiet. And quiet is where you rebuild. That's where you remember what it feels like to trust your own thoughts again, to make choices without fear, to look in the mirror and see yourself instead of the reflection they projected onto you. They might still try to reach out. A message, a memory, a subtle attempt to test the waters. Don't take the bait. You don't need to prove anything by responding. The closure you're looking for isn't on the other side of another conversation. It's already inside you. You've just been too busy defending yourself to feel it. And that's what they'll never understand. You didn't become cold. You became clear. You didn't lose empathy. You gained boundaries. You didn't give up on love. You stopped confusing love with control. That distinction is everything. Because once you know the difference, you never go back. Real love doesn't ask you to shrink. It doesn't demand you to forget who you are to keep the peace. Real love stands beside your strength. It doesn't punish you for it. And that's where you're heading now. Out of the fog, out of the noise, back to yourself. This isn't just recovery, it's resurrection. And it starts with one quiet decision: no more. When the dust finally settles after a narcissist, there's a silence that almost feels unbearable. It's the kind of silence that used to terrify you. The absence of noise, of drama, of constant highs and lows. You used to confuse that silence with loneliness, but now it's something else entirely. It's freedom. It's the stillness that follows a storm you didn't realize you'd been standing in for years. And in that quiet, for the first time, you can hear your own thoughts again. At first, they sound unfamiliar, because for so long, your mind was an echo chamber of someone else's voice, their opinions, their moods, their judgments. You learned to measure yourself through their eyes, to anticipate their reactions before they even spoke. You were surviving in response to them. But now, the silence gives you back your own sound. It's shaky at first, uncertain, like a voice learning to speak again. But every day it gets stronger. Healing after a narcissist isn't about forgetting them. It's about remembering yourself. It's about realizing that the parts of you they convinced you were too much, too emotional, too intense, too sensitive, were never flaws. They were targets. They saw your empathy and mistook it for weakness. They saw your openness and turned it into access. But what they underestimated was your resilience. Because once someone has tried to destroy your light and failed, that light comes back fiercer than ever. You'll begin to notice how they conditioned your reactions, how you used to apologize just to avoid conflict, how you kept shrinking to make them comfortable. You'll see how they trained you to over-explain, to justify your boundaries, to question your instincts. And when you recognize it, something inside you hardens, not in bitterness, but in resolve. You start realizing that protecting your peace doesn't make you cold, it makes you wise. You no longer chase validation. You choose self-respect. This is the part of healing most people never talk about, the identity reconstruction. Because a narcissist doesn't just break your heart, they dismantle your sense of self. They chip away at you until you start asking questions like, who am I without them? And that's the hardest question of all. But it's also the doorway to everything you lost. You start small. You do things they used to criticize. You wear the clothes they mocked. You play the music they rolled their eyes at. You speak in the tone they called too direct. You reclaim every part of yourself they tried to erase. And piece by piece, you start to recognize the person staring back at you in the mirror. You realize that healing isn't about becoming someone new. It's about coming home to who you were before you were convinced you were not enough. But make no mistake, they will notice your growth. Narcissists always do. They can feel when they're no longer the center of your universe. And that's when they try to reappear, like a shadow that doesn't understand it no longer belongs to the light. They might reach out under the guise of peace, pretending they've changed. They'll say they've been thinking, that they finally see things clearly, that they miss you. But what they miss isn't you. It's their access to you. They miss the version of you who tried to fix them, who believed in their potential, who tolerated their chaos. You'll feel the pull to respond, to test whether maybe this time it's real. But you already know how the story goes. It starts with apologies and ends with confusion. The difference now is that you don't need to reread that chapter to remember how it ends. You already learned the lesson, and you learned it the hard way. So you stay silent, you stay grounded, you stay free. That silence that once felt empty now feels sacred. Because it's not just the absence of their noise, it's the presence of your peace. You start seeing that peace isn't something that happens when life is perfect. It's what happens when you finally stop letting chaos rent space in your mind. And in that stillness, something beautiful happens. You stop defining strength as endurance. You stop calling suffering loyalty. You stop mistaking intensity for intimacy. You start understanding that real love isn't about who can survive the most pain together. It's about who can bring out the best in each other. You begin to build new standards, quietly but firmly. You stop chasing people who only show up halfway. You stop explaining your worth to those who can't recognize it. You start saving your energy for people who value peace the way you do. And most importantly, you stop trying to prove your goodness to people committed to misunderstanding you. The irony is that the same strength they once mocked is now the thing that keeps you grounded. You no longer live in reaction to anyone else's chaos. You don't chase closure, you create it. You don't wait for permission to move forward, you just do. Because the truth is, healing isn't loud. It's not a victory march or a public declaration. It's quiet, it's subtle. It's choosing not to respond. It's choosing not to explain. It's choosing peace even when no one claps for it. And when you reach that place, that quiet, steady confidence, the narcissist loses all power they ever had because you finally see it for what it always was, an illusion. They were never powerful. They were just persuasive. And now their voice no longer echoes in your mind. Only yours does. You've survived the storm. Now you're learning to dance in the calm. Healing after a narcissist isn't a straight line. It's a spiral. You don't just wake up one day free from the memories, the triggers, or the questions. It's slower, more human than that. Some mornings you'll feel light, steady, unshakable. Others, a scent, a song, or a phrase will pull you back to a time when your heart still believed their promises. And that's okay. Healing isn't about never looking back. It's about no longer wanting to stay there. There's a point in recovery when the external battle ends, but the internal one begins. It's not about them anymore. It's about you, your patterns, your boundaries, your history. Because surviving a narcissist forces you to see not only who they were, but also the parts of yourself that tolerated them. That's where the deepest work happens, in the quiet, uncomfortable space where self-awareness meets accountability. You begin asking questions like, why did I ignore the red flags? Why did I keep hoping they'd change? Why did I feel like I had to earn love? And instead of judging those questions, you start listening to them. Because behind each one lies a wound that existed long before the narcissist ever appeared. That's the cruel genius of manipulation. It finds the cracks in your foundation and builds a castle on top of them. If you grew up believing love had to be earned, they mirrored that belief. If you feared abandonment, they dangled presence and withdrawal like a pendulum. They didn't create those fears, they exploited them, which means your healing isn't about them at all. It's about sealing those cracks from within. You start doing the work, real work, not the kind that looks good on social media, but the kind that demands honesty and patience. You learn to sit with discomfort instead of running from it. You begin to recognize your old coping mechanisms, the over-explaining, the people-pleasing, the need to prove your worth, and you stop judging yourself for them because you understand they were survival tools once. But now, you're building something different. You begin to build self-trust. It starts small, with simple decisions. What to eat, what to wear, what you want to do on a quiet weekend. These tiny choices matter more than you think, because each one whispers the same message. I trust myself again. That trust grows stronger every time you choose peace over chaos, silence over reaction, truth over comfort. You stop outsourcing your intuition to anyone else. And when the narcissist tries to circle back, because they always do, you notice the difference immediately. The same words that once melted your defenses now sound empty. The same promises that once felt magnetic now ring false. It's not that they've changed, it's that you've stopped needing them to. You see the cycle for what it is. Not love, not fate, just manipulation repeating itself. And for the first time, it doesn't pull you in, it repels you. That's the real definition of closure. Not a conversation, not an apology, not even understanding. Closure is when the story no longer has power over you. When you can remember what happened without feeling the urge to rewrite it. When you no longer romanticize the beginning or demonize the end. You just accept it for what it was, a lesson in disguise. The more you heal, the more you realize how much energy you used to spend trying to control the uncontrollable. You tried to predict their moods, to manage their emotions, to prevent the next explosion. You lived in constant vigilance. Now that same energy becomes something else. It becomes creativity, focus, presence, life. The mind that once analyzed every text now plans dreams, projects, ideas. The heart that once begged for love now beats calmly in its own rhythm. That's the beauty of peace. It doesn't just feel good, it gives you back time. You start noticing how the world feels different when you're no longer walking on eggshells. Colors look brighter, music feels richer, even silence carries warmth instead of dread. You stop tiptoeing through your own days. You speak differently, slower, more intentional, because you're no longer afraid of being misunderstood. You live differently, because you're no longer trying to be chosen. And yes, there will still be echoes. There will be days when the old version of you resurfaces, the one who overthinks, who questions, who wonders if maybe it really was your fault. But that's not regression, that's residue. Healing doesn't erase what happened. It teaches you to meet those echoes with compassion instead of panic. You don't need to silence them. You just remind them that they don't run the show anymore. You start seeing love differently too. You stop being impressed by intensity and start valuing consistency. You stop confusing attention with affection. You start noticing that real love doesn't rush in to overwhelm you. It arrives slowly, builds quietly, and stays without drama. And most importantly, it feels safe. Not because it's perfect, but because you no longer abandon yourself inside it. By now, you understand something profound. The opposite of manipulation isn't control. It's peace. The opposite of confusion isn't certainty, it's clarity. And the opposite of a narcissist isn't another person. It's the version of you who knows exactly who you are, who doesn't need to beg to be seen, who has nothing left to prove. That's the version you've been becoming all along, the one who can love without losing herself, the one who can be kind without being used, the one who no longer needs chaos to feel alive. This is the rise that happens after the fall. Not loud, not cinematic, but steady, grounded, and unstoppable. Because when you've been to the depths of manipulation and found your way out, peace is not just a feeling. It's a revolution. There comes a turning point in healing, a quiet but undeniable moment when you stop looking at your past through the lens of pain and start seeing it as proof of your strength. It doesn't happen all at once. It unfolds gradually, like light creeping in through the cracks. One day, you wake up and realize you've gone hours without thinking about them. The silence that used to feel hollow now feels whole. You no longer crave the chaos, not because you've forgotten it, but because you've outgrown it. That's the strange beauty of recovery. You don't notice you've healed until you face something that used to break you. And this time, you don't crumble. You pause, breathe, and move on. No explanation, No guilt, no collapse. That's what growth looks like when it's real. It's not loud. It's not about revenge or closure or proving anything. It's about no longer needing any of it. You begin to understand that not everyone who hurt you was evil, but some were deeply broken. And you got caught in the crossfire of their unhealed wounds. Narcissists are masters of projection. They can't face their own emptiness, so they offload it onto others. Every accusation, every manipulation, every insult was never truly about you. It was about them trying to escape themselves. When you realize this, you stop taking their cruelty personally. Their behavior stops being a mystery and becomes a mirror of their own unresolved pain. And that realization frees you. Because once you stop internalizing their chaos, you stop carrying it. You stop feeling responsible for fixing things that were never yours to repair. You stop confusing control with care. You stop trying to love someone into being whole. You finally understand that it was never your job to rescue them from themselves. And in that acceptance, your peace begins to take root. This is the phase of rebuilding, not just your routines, but your worldview. You start noticing how your standards shift. You don't tolerate half-truths or hot and cold affection anymore. You recognize emotional manipulation before it wraps itself around your heart. You no longer explain your boundaries like they're up for negotiation. You state them, and you move forward. This isn't arrogance, it's clarity. It's knowing the cost of peace and refusing to discount it again. The people who enter your life now feel different. You can sense authenticity in their tone, consistency in their actions. You learn to trust energy more than words. You start realizing that love isn't supposed to be a guessing game. It's supposed to feel like safety. And when you meet people who bring calm instead of chaos, who ask instead of assume, who listen without twisting your words, it's disorienting at first. You're not used to ease, but slowly your body learns to relax again. You begin to notice the subtle ways your nervous system heals. You no longer flinch when someone raises their voice. You no longer rush to apologize for existing. You no longer replay every conversation in your head, searching for what you could have said differently. The self-doubt begins to quiet. The hypervigilance begins to fade. You start to feel at home in your own skin again. And that's when you understand your healing is not just survival, it's reclamation. It's taking back every part of you that was buried under their control. It's rediscovering joy in small things. A slow morning, a genuine laugh, a conversation that doesn't drain you. You begin to see beauty not in perfection, but in peace. Still, there will be days when the past tries to whisper, when your mind replays old moments or questions your decisions. That's normal. Healing doesn't erase the memory, it changes your relationship with it. When those thoughts come, you remind yourself gently, I survived that. I don't live there anymore. And with time, those words stop being affirmations and start being facts. You start to see how strong you've become, not the kind of strength that comes from pretending you're fine, but the kind that's born from endurance, awareness, and the decision to rise. You've learned that empathy without boundaries is self-destruction, that love without respect is a trap, that forgiveness doesn't mean access. You no longer confuse softness with submission. You can be kind and firm, compassionate and distant, loving and guarded, all at once. And in this new clarity, something even more powerful happens. You forgive yourself. You stop blaming yourself for staying too long, for believing too much, for loving too deeply. You realize you did the best you could with what you knew at the time. You understand that the version of you who stayed wasn't weak. They were hopeful. They wanted to believe in goodness, in potential, in redemption. That's not naivety, that's heart. And that heart, wiser now, will never be wasted again. Forgiving yourself doesn't mean excusing what happened. It means you stop punishing yourself for surviving it. It means you give yourself permission to be happy again, not cautiously, but fully. Because joy after pain is not betrayal of the past. It's proof of transformation. You no longer wear your scars like shame. You wear them like medals, evidence that you went through hell and came back with light in your hands. That's the quiet miracle of healing. Not that you forget what happened, but that it no longer defines you. You start to understand that closure isn't a door someone else locks or opens. It's a boundary you build. You stop waiting for an apology that will never come. You stop expecting accountability from someone incapable of self-reflection. You stop chasing understanding from someone who built their entire identity around denial. You no longer live to prove anything. You live to experience everything, freely, intentionally, and on your own terms. You see your strength not as armor, but as awareness. You realize that peace was never outside of you. It was always waiting underneath the noise. This is what rising looks like. Not a sudden transformation, but 1,000 quiet choices to protect your energy, honor your truth, and trust your worth. It's the realization that your story didn't end with what they did to you. It began with what you decided to do after.